reminder for those in North Dakota, tomorrow will be a full system test of the outdoor siren warning system as part of Severe Weather Awareness Week. Now, tomorrow is a time to practice tornado sheltering plans. Here in Fargo, officials say that you should never assume there is no emergency because skies are clear. There may be an emergency not related to the weather. And tomorrow, do not call 911 to ask questions about the siren systems. All questions should go to the Office of Emergency Management. The siren structure is an outdoor warning system. Therefore, you may not be able to hear the sirens outdoors or during an actual event due to high winds as well as weather conditions. This will take place tomorrow at 11:15 in the morning.